Hello, my name is Nia McLeod, and the topic that I selected for my tab project is the Prescription Drug Monitoring Program. The scope of the United States war on drugs has expanded from illegal substances such as marijuana, cocaine, and heroin to now include prescription drugs such as oxycodone, Ritalin, Xanax, and Ambien at an alarming rate. In 2011, the Centers for Disease Control reported nearly 3 out of 4 prescription overdoses are caused by prescription painkillers. One of the government's resources for addressing this epidemic is through a technological tool called the Prescription Drug Monitoring Program, which initially was only utilized by law enforcement to investigate criminal activity. This is a state-level government program that's administered differently from state to state. As it stands today, there are 40 states that have active programs. Prescription drug abuse is nothing new in America. In the late 1800s through to the early 1900s, it was not unusual for physicians to treat their patients, most commonly white middle-class women, with opiate and cocaine-laced medications, which often led to opiate and cocaine addiction. However, it was during this period under the Woodrow Wilson, Warren Harding, and Calvin Coolidge administrations that the federal government intervened and began to regulate drug use in this country, as well as categorize opium and cocoa derivatives as narcotics. One of the first laws to be enacted was the Harrison Narcotic Drug Act of 1914, which made it a crime for physicians to prescribe narcotics for patients suffering from addiction. Several years later, the federal government passed additional drug regulations, including the Narcotic Drug and Export Act of 1922 and the Heroin Act of 1924. Even though the government was making progress in the fight against drug abuse, they never consulted any medical experts, some of which who felt that prescribing opiates to drug addicts was a viable method for handling drug addiction. As a matter of fact, between 1914 through to 1938, it's estimated there were between 141,000 and 270,000 known opiate addicts. As a result of the government's crackdown on illegal substances, there were about 25,000 physicians that were arrested during this period, of which 5,000 served jail time for treating patients with opiates. A surge in prescription drug use occurred again in the 1960s, around the time of the Vietnam War, which made it easier for heroin to find its way over to the United States from Southeast Asia. Prescription drugs were being overly prescribed and therefore more susceptible to abuse. In addition, American soldiers that were over in Vietnam were also abusing alcohol, prescription drugs, and other illicit drugs, including heroin. Fast forward to today, and researchers have blamed this generation's growing prescription drug abuse epidemic in the United States on a number of factors, the first of which is the introduction of oxycodone in 1996. Reportedly, when oxycodone was introduced in the United States, the pharmaceutical company responsible for manufacturing the drug was not honest about the harmful effects, including the highly addictive nature of the drug. They also, in addition, there were doctors prescribing oxycodone and similar drugs, although they lacked training on how to properly dispense these types of drugs. As a result, addictive drugs were put into the hands of patients that may have been prone to abuse painkillers. It would also seem that there were doctors that were not fully aware of or simply did not consider the effect of oxycodone when they interact with other prescription medication. Moreover, doctors prescribing oxycodone lacked a way to track whether the patients were doctor shopping to get the same type of prescriptions filled by another unsuspecting doctor. Accordingly, this led to an excess supply of oxycodone available to abusers and diverted to be sold illegally. It was reported that the government took an inordinate amount of time to respond to the growing prescription drug abuse problem. It was not until 2002 until state governments started to implement prescription drug monitoring programs to help curb drug abuse. According to this chart from the 2010 National Survey on Drug Use and Health, it's reported that for individuals 12 years and older, non-medical use of prescription drugs came in second to marijuana as the most common form of illegal drugs in this country. Also, data from the 2010 National Survey on Drug Use and Health indicates that the majority, or 55%, of prescription drug abusers get access to the drugs from a friend or relative. And now some background information on the prescription drug monitoring program. During the 1990s, prior to the implementation of the prescription drug monitoring program, there was a triplicate prescription program, paper program in place to monitor Schedule II prescription drugs. One copy was maintained by the doctor, the second copy went to the pharmacist, and the third copy went to the state government. This program was viewed as too manual intensive. In order to make the process more efficient, the government replaced a triplicate prescription program with the prescription drug monitoring automated monitoring program. And as of June 2012, there are 40 states with active prescription drug monitoring programs. The remaining states are either in the process of implementing a program or lack the necessary funding to implement a program. It's actually very expensive to set up and to run the prescription drug monitoring program on an annual basis. It's approximated that it can range anywhere from $450,000 to $1.5 million just to implement the program. And annual operating costs can range anywhere from $125,000 to $1 million. And however, one must consider that the prescription drug epidemic is costing the government billions of dollars. In 2009, the Department of Justice reported that prescription drug diversion cost the government $72 billion. In addition, for that same period, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services reported that $180 billion is spent annually on drug use disorders. Fortunately, my research found that states that lack the funding for the prescription monitoring programs can apply for federal grants that are provided by the Harold Rogers Prescription Drug Monitoring Program grant and the National Alliance for Model State Drug Laws Act grant. And between 2009 and 2011, collectively, these two federal agencies provided $7.6 million to fund state prescription drug monitoring programs. As I've stated a few times, the prescription drug monitoring programs are administered differently from state to state. They need to determine who has primary responsibility for the administration of the program, how will the prescription data be submitted, who can access patient data, what types of controlled substances will be monitored, will they initiate queries based on observations of unusual activity, which is more of a proactive approach, or will they just perform queries based on law enforcement requests, which is considered a more reactive approach. To get an idea of how prescription drug monitoring program technology works, I had to consult directly with a state's prescription drug monitoring program website. So I selected Florida, and they their prescription drug monitoring program is called the Electronic Florida Online Reporting of Controlled Substances Evaluation, or eForce. And it's web-based. It was developed by the Health Information Designs, and it's actually called RX Sentry. All dispensers have to create and upload an account in order to submit prescription data. Dispensers that have pharmacies that have multiple locations, they can establish one account to upload data. They have to establish a username and a password, and once they enter in all that information, set up their account, they have to determine how they're going to upload their data, and they have about 4 or 5 different options, and all of those options have ensure that the data is secured, such as encrypted files and secure socket layer websites, so they don't have to worry about a patient's information being compromised. All electronic data submissions have to be formatted into the American Society for Automation in Pharmacy 4.1 specifications, and all electronically submitted files are date stamped, and the dispenser will be alerted when the files have been received, and the submitted files are scanned for errors under pre-established criteria. Single record and batch record errors can cause records to be rejected, and the dispenser will also be alerted of the status of their submission. Corrections to records have to be done or have to be resubmitted within 7 days. The State of Florida, they do issue electronic reporting waivers for valid reasons on a limited basis for those dispensers that do not have internet access. Some of the challenges that the prescription drug monitoring program has faced include vulnerability of the patient's privacy. Majority of the states do not share data beyond state borders, even though you do have a few that have started. Also, the prescription drug monitoring program systems are not always user-friendly and can be too time-consuming for dispensers to input the information. So a lot of people don't even bother to sign up to use the programs in states that it's not required to participate. Also, there's a lack of coordinated efforts between government agencies and law enforcement. The future of PDMP seems to be information sharing between states. As of February 2012, there are 28 states that have either passed legislation or have a memorandum of understanding for interstate data exchange in place. The prescription monitoring information exchange program is what makes the interstate data sharing possible, and it's based on the National Information Exchange model that has hubs to allow data sharing between federal and state government as well as private industry. The PMIX program requires that state laws are passed that allow for real-time sharing with other states. The state must identify at least one state to exchange data with. There must be an MOU in place with a partner state, or the state must have adopted the prescription monitoring interstate compact. And also the participating states' data sharing systems must be compliant with the PMIX architecture, which has security measures in place and ensure that the sensitive data that's shared between the agencies is encrypted as it flows through each hub, and that the shared data is not stored on those hubs. The most recent development in this area is Interconnect, and it's a data sharing system, and it was created or built by the National Association of Boards of Pharmacies, and there are currently 9 states that are sharing data via Interconnect, and it's anticipated that a total of 20 states will be using Interconnect by year end, and their goal is to get every state to sign on.